So what is happening this week in European VC and in the UK? Should the UK be part of Europe, which it is, as Mads had just told me, off screen, just said, yes, the UK is and will be. The big news this week, Mads, is Slush. Obviously, the whole world in our industry has been at Slush. How did you find it? This is your first go. What's your takeaway?
It was a great event. Lots and lots of energy, 13,000 attendees this year, which means it's big enough to matter, but it's also well organized enough not to be completely chaotic. I think there's a super strong focus on founders. I really love the way they put the founders first. Yeah. There's great companies, some great founders. There was a couple of us up there from the firm, and we met close to 50 startups in kind of one-to-one meetings.
What was the divide, Matt? What was the investor founder ratio? What was the makeup of the event? Do you know?
It's a good question. I don't have that stat, but there were founders
very
everywhere.
Focused.
Yeah, there were 13,000 people, right? There were lots of focus. Also folks that aren't founders necessarily, folks that just are interested. But I think that the Slush team, they've created something that's really special. And, they have an excellent scheduling system that means it's quite easy to find relevant meetings. And I think if there is a real lesson here, sort of post-COVID lesson, it is that human...
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I like the one thing before you move on, the meetings bit. I love the fact that they had the VC leaderboard. I love the fact that they called out who was doing well with responding as a VC with responding to founders. I thought that was just a genius way of reverse engineering that, not FOMO, but that kind of transparency between VC and founder communication. I thought that was great. Sorry, I
absolutely agree. Yeah, absolutely agree. Look, I think the Slush team, they've managed over the last 15 years to take an event from kind of a small local event to a very, very important regional event. Miki Kusi was the first CEO, Peter Vesterbacka, one of the founders there. And it's interesting that they're also incredible founders outside of what they've done with Slush, which speaks to the power of entrepreneurship. So Peter Vesterbacka, he was the founder of Rovio, Angry Birds fame. And Miki, he went on to found Volt. And I think what that reminds us of is that founders really can change the trajectory of things, and then that can go on to change the world. I mean, these, 15 years ago, these were, young folks in Finland with an idea to create this event. But they had this power and this energy to go off and make it happen. And now it's become such an important, meeting point for the European venture ecosystem. So I think that's phenomenally done.
It always reminds me of a destination wedding. It always reminds me, if I was to get married in London, no one would come. But the fact that it's in Helsinki and it's freezing cold in winter and it's such an odd fish thing to do, I'm sure that's been a factor in their success. It's like you have to make a concerted effort. You have to make the journey. And I'm sure that destination piece has played a part.
Absolutely. Completely agree.
Any other key takeaways for you from any other great meetings, disastrous meetings, good, bad, ugly from Slush?
Lots of people go there to look at talks and sort of look at what's happening on the stages. I really went to meet folks on a one-on-one basis. I think that's so special. And so for me, the takeaway was just, I had a good 30 meetings over 2.5 days, which was intense, but also just very, very rewarding in all sorts of ways. And hopefully there'll be some good, opportunities coming away from an investment perspective as well. So yeah, really, really enjoyed it.
Well, I hope you get some rest. They must be exhausting, 30 back-to-backs. The other big news this week is that Bitcoin is edging towards $100,000. Now, I have quite strong opinions about this, and I think you're a little bit more pragmatic, possibly. So obviously, Trump getting into power has unleashed this next wave of Bitcoin growth. So the questions still are, what is it? Is it good for society? Is it good for government? Is it good for the individual? I mean, what's your take on Bitcoin from the macro? Now we're heading towards 100K.
I've got a lot of thoughts on this. A bit like you, I think. Bitcoin started the year around $40,000 per coin. It's now close to 100,000. Many people are thinking about Bitcoin as a new type of money. And what is money? It's kind of, we think about money as something we can use to store value, something we can use to account for things, kind of a unit of account, and something that's a medium of exchange, so something we can use to buy and sell stuff. And so the question becomes, if we think about Bitcoin as money, how useful is it at those three things? So, theoretically, Bitcoin can be used to buy and sell things, but it's probably a bit cumbersome and maybe a bit of an expensive way to transact. So I don't think it doesn't seem like it's really broken through as a medium of exchange just yet. So how about unit of account then? We can use it to keep track of things, but for example, in our company accounts, and it's possible that some businesses will start doing all their accounts in Bitcoin, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I think we're probably some ways off that. So the third thing, a store of value then, and we can unpack some of the pros and cons of sort of storing your value in Bitcoin. Now, on the one hand, we've had a lot of inflation over the last few years, and the number of Bitcoins ever theoretically that will ever be in existence, they're capped at 21 million coins. So there can never be more. That's the way the technology is designed. And that's a stark contrast to the way fiat currency, normal money works, which is really just regulated by the government. And if the government needs more money, theoretically can print more money. So there are some people that argue that Bitcoin can be a deflationary counterweight to sort of the fiat currency. I'd say that the third argument people use is really this decentralization. So there is no government control. And that means that if you live in an autocratic country and you might be worried that the government is going to seize all your assets and your house and your bank account, well, if you have the money stashed away in Bitcoin, you can potentially keep some of that safe. And that might be useful if you live in a less savory country or regime. So those are some of the arguments people are using. Now, on the other hand, there's this notion of store of value. That really is most useful if that store is relatively stable. If you look at Bitcoin, it's been remarkably volatile. And so you don't want your store to be too volatile. I mean, you've had a huge crash a few years ago. There is a sense right now that with Gary Gensler stepping down, Trump having done a 180-degree U-turn and really coming back in favor of Bitcoin, whereas he used to be against, it will be up
really?
to the
Trump's
right.
changed his mind, he's sold his soul. Mr. Transaction, never.
Do you know what? The whole thing about changing mind, I think it's sometimes unreasonably derided. Keynes always said, when the facts change, I changed my mind. What do you do, right?
But it's always a death knell in politics, and it's funny that I'm hoping that one of the good things that comes out of a Trump administration is the fact that he's absolutely thrown the rule book away. And because changing your mind, I mean, there's so many studies done on when politicians say, well, I've seen more data and I've changed my mind. That's actually really unsuccessful with the electorate. Maybe that's changed now, but he's totally changed the rule book. So I'm hoping that that's one of the things that's changed with it.
I think there is a bit of a new rule book, as you say, but we'll see, right? There's often a pendulum that goes to one side and another.
Yeah.
But coming back to the volatility of Bitcoin, I mean, it has been very volatile, which means it can be hard to rely on it as a store of value, unless, of course, you think it is going to go up forever. So there is a fourth option for why it might be useful, and that is medium exchange, unit of account, store of value, as a medium of speculation. And it turns out that if you're in the financial industry, if you're a trader, then things that are very volatile are amazing. There are great ways to trade and make money. Traders, they can make money when things go up and when they go down. And so in the financial system, there are lots of people that are huge fans of Bitcoin because it's been an amazing way to trade and to make money. So, what do I think about it? It is the same way Las Vegas is. I'm not convinced yet that it will have a lot of use beyond the use that Las Vegas has, which is useful in some ways. We will see. And especially kind of with the whole new outlook of the new U.S. government, will that dramatically change the way governments use Bitcoin? It's possible. But I mean, so far, I think the jury is out.
I bought at 8,000 and then I traded between 8 and 18,000 maybe 5-6 years ago, and really got into Bitcoin and very much explored the notion of decentralized currency and decentralized ledgers and blockchain, and then became very cynical very quickly that we just simply destroy institutions at our peril. If we are looking to, I mean, for starters, there's nothing wrong with inflation. There's nothing wrong with printing money within bounds. And I'm sure we've gone wayward over the last recent years, but you need inflation for a healthy economy. And my personal belief is that it's the little people that will lose out. It's the Joe and Jane, it's the mum and pops that are going to lose out, not these big institutions that are playing the game. And you can see, I mean, I track the Bitcoin price every day, and you can see the pump and dump schemes. And my next best guess would be once we hit the 100K, if we get there, then there'll be a sell-off. So I just fear. I think Bitcoin is theft, and I fear for institutions. And I know that Trump again is throwing out the rule book with institutions, and there's going to be a whole world of change, and there will be some positive outcomes to that. But I think that if we don't have government-backed currency, and we don't then enable through taxation and through controls and regulation the facility to build roads and hospitals and have healthcare, welfare, defense, and all of those good things, I think it's going to be dangerous. But I also think that there's two outcomes here. One is that it gets regulated out of existence, which the horse has bolted on that one. The second option is that it gets layered into existence and becomes part of the system, in which case you can't do all of the nefarious things. And either it leans into your argument of it becoming a store of value and an inflation hedge, which I kind of can't see how, but we'll see what happens with that. But I think there's either way, I think it's a fairly short time scale before it just finds a stasis and finds the hodlers hodling. And I imagine that'll be in fairly short shrift, or maybe after the next crash, who knows. But let's see if Bitcoin first of all hits 100K.
Well, it's been close, right? We're very, very close now.
Well, I think at the time of recording, it's about $97,000, but we'll see.
Yeah, look, as soon as I was fairly confident Trump was going to win, I bought Bitcoin, because I'm like, this is going to go to 100K, and lo and behold, it was. I think this is one of the more obvious trades of the last few months.
So you're one of those. I can't believe I'm your business partner. And Anthropic. Let's move into the AI world. We've got a couple of topics on AI. How can we not talk about it? So Anthropic has raised another $4 billion from Amazon. No great surprise. The immediate question that follows these mega fundraisers and this activity in AI, and it's still holding true, there's still a lot of activity to go, is are we at peak AI? So I want to bake two questions into one and talk about this. Well, first of all, let's talk about Anthropic. So what's going on here? Give us the insight on Anthropic.
It's a fascinating business. Dario Amodei is the founder there. He was formerly...
Did you listen to his pod with Lex Fridman?
Google and OpenAI.
You do the 5.5 hour pod with Lex?
I've done the full 5 hours yet, but I've actually done a fair few bits of it because there were some things I wanted to dive into. And I think great founder, amazing business he has built. And we'll talk a little bit about the whole data scaling issue he covers, because that's an important part of this. But just coming back to the investment first. So, why is Amazon investing now? Does it make business sense? How does it align with the company's strategy? If we look at take a step back, so the hyperscalers, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft have invested $60 billion in CapEx in Q3 alone. Massive amounts. And the reason is that the potential prize for AGI is so big that there's almost no limit to how much money you could invest. If you get there first, how much is that worth? Trillions. So everybody is really piling in. Now, 60 to 70% of Anthropic's revenue is now through APIs, and that is in particular through Amazon's Bedrock service. So that means that developers developing AI applications are developing on top of Amazon Web Services, and they're using the Bedrock service, and a lot of that is Anthropic. So that compares to less than 30% for OpenAI. Now, OpenAI's revenue is still estimated to be about 5 times of Anthropic's, but both are really formidable companies. So, I'm glad that Anthropic is racing this round. I think this competition is so important.
Yes.
OpenAI has really been ahead of the competition in many ways, in the way they grow, and we can't let them own the whole market just yet. It's too important. So we need Google to do what they do. We need Anthropic to do what they do. We need this competition. It's vital.
The next kind of set of questions that I have rolling around in my head are this notion of peak AI. So are we seeing, I mean, part of what the CEO of Anthropic was saying was that AGI is not that far away, and he's quite confident, and he's fearful of the lack of regulation in the space was another clip that I saw. But there are other kind of stories going around the social web around peak AI and the fact that there is not that much data left to train on. I don't have the insight here. I don't know if you do, but are we anywhere near peak LLM? Are we kind of getting to that almost like plateau of what these functional sets can do, do you think?
Yeah, we're talking about it a lot. I mean, the analogy I would draw is the same one we always use when we talk about startups, not always being up and to the right. I think in technology, you hit these obstacles and then you have to try and overcome them with new approaches. Exactly like when you build a startup. It's not just up every quarter following the same playbook. You're taking a step back. What is it we're talking about here? When you build these new AI models, you need to train them on data because data is how they learn, how the world works, and how to formulate and create the text they create, and also understanding how to read and what we write and tell them what that means. And what we've been doing so far, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and others, is to take more and more data and train them for longer on bigger and bigger clusters. Cluster being a huge collection of microprocessors and GPUs, to train these models to understand what the text means and to generate new text. And so the saying right now is that the companies are running out of high-quality data. And because they're running out of high-quality data, it becomes harder to just throwing more processors at it, just throwing more training time to create better models because there's not enough data to do that. And so that means we're facing a potential for diminishing returns. And another thing is there's also this idea of plateauing generalization. So that models increasingly are not becoming better at generalizing from one task to another task, which is, of course, is a critical aspect of general intelligence or kind of next generation AI, is that models get better and better at understanding not just the things they have seen, but also the things they haven't seen, because that's how the human brain works. We can generalize from one domain to another. Now, if you think about Amodei, what he's doing at Anthropic, what OpenAI is doing, and Sam Altman, they are talking about the continuous innovation they are having to overcome some of these challenges. Some of them being synthetic data, so the fact that machines can create new data, so we can teach them parameters, we can teach them things that allows them to come up with data that they can then use to train on. They also keep making new training techniques, so it's not just brute force, throwing more and more data and processes at things, but actually training in different ways and having other approaches. That means that we can become efficient for much, much longer. And then finally, there's this whole notion of reasoning. We've seen that with OpenAI's O1 model, which is just mind-blowing. And actually, if you take a slightly different approach to the one shot, so meaning I create a prompt and then I immediately get the response back, kind of the reasoning that you see in O1 is I present the prompt to the model, and then the model will go off and it'll do some thinking and it'll ask itself some questions and use these questions to formulate new hypotheses. So it takes a bit longer, but the results can be, incredible. Combining innovation in how we create data, innovations on how we train, and then innovations in how the models they operate, between those three, both Amodei and also Sam Altman are saying, look, we have so much further to go here. We're still barely scratching the surface. So those are sort of the arguments for and against here of continued growth of the AI strength.
There's one little extra thing that I wanted to add, which was the Tom Tongas piece on the libraries that he found on his computer that actually create the personalization to someone. So you got this, let's say you've got this great reasoning engine. So you've got this best mate that is scouring the web for you and finding all of this incredible information within context. But then he was just raised this very simple point that you actually have this local library of you, which then even that sits on top of that algorithmic feedback to then make it even more personal. So when you're talking about writing an article in your tone of voice, or finding data and manipulating data in a way that suits you and your work patterns. And I thought that I'll post that in the comments. I thought that was just a really interesting angle, not on the synthetic data or on the plateauing of AI or any of those topics, but I thought it was just a really nice reminder of the power of AI. And I always think that people like Apple will have, because they own such massive ecosystems, that once your handset learns you, which is private data to you, and then has access to these incredible resources online, whether it's OpenAI or other LLMs, that just feels like magic sauce stuff, because your handset, the supercomputer in your pocket, becomes this incredibly contextually useful device. It can talk between all the apps, lives within the ecosystem, and can be like your best mate almost in your pocket. There's a Stephen Hawking on steroids meets Einstein meets Stephen Fry, or whoever you want to be. So it just feels like we're almost at that kind of layer of contextual connection and contextual learning on a really useful device in your pocket. And I think this is where Apple's going to go with Apple Intelligence. I don't know if you've used it yet. Are you using Apple AI?
Yeah, I have it installed. I'm not an Apple fanboy. I don't think it's a very innovative company. But I've been using OpenAI's memory function for the last 6 months, and it's incredible. The way ChatGPT learns about you, about your preferences, about your views, and then incorporates and reincorporates those data points back into replies. It is a force multiplier in terms of how useful it is. I think it absolutely speaks to what you're saying. I think it will happen, and I agree that Apple probably is going to go there. I haven't really been very impressed with anything Apple has done in this direction yet. But I'm sure it's going to come, because it's not hard to copy the principle of having a memory. And that is, LLMs have theoretically infinite memory, which is part of what makes them so powerful.
And infinite data access.
Correct.
I'm not going to write it off just yet. Siri is still useless, just to be completely frank, and I am an Apple fanboy. Siri is still fundamentally useless, but I can just get a sense of the direction of travel now. It's useless minus a bit, or useless plus a bit, depending on which direction of travel you want to go in. It's coming.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more.
So another thing that came up this week for us was a couple of search engines across Europe are coming online to go up against Google. And this just raises that whole, can local search engines be useful? Can a local search engine be more useful than a global search engine? I can't see how. But we've got Ecosia and Quant. They're looking to build a specific European search index. What's going on here, and can it even be done? Is this even worth pondering? What do you reckon?
Yes, look. They are attempting to create European alternatives to US big tech, and the aims are laudable. We've fallen way behind in Europe, and so we should try and do things to catch up. I think that's overall a great aim. I question whether making a slightly inferior but local version of something American is really worthwhile.
Sounds very European to me.
But we say that, but then I'm also thinking about the European automotive industry, which for decades was just not slightly worse and inferior, but absolutely the best on the planet. Yeah. And it feels to me that that's what we should aspire to with the things we do. It almost makes me feel a little bit like, that's the way a developing economy does things, right? Where you're sort of saying, look, we'll never catch up. So we'll just try and make something a little bit worse in a protectionist way so that at least we can we can use our local thing. Look, maybe we are a developing economy, but that's certainly not why I'm playing, just to play for seconds. And I think we should want to play for more. People argue that we are doing this because we need it for sovereignty reasons, especially after Trump's victory. And yes, we should make Europe great again, but I'm just not sure.
You didn't just say that. You just go mega. You went mega on me, didn't you?
I went mega on you. Absolutely. No, I'd love to see us lean into the areas where we are already world class and then push to build global leaders there. But what if what we did was come up with the best way to make cars in the world, right? Why not? Why are we trying to make a worse search engine instead of trying to make the best car? How did we let Tesla take kind of the leadership in software-defined, automotives? Yeah, why? There's more to do. So I'm not super impressed with these local search engines. I'm not sure that's where we should be spending our time.
I'm with you completely. But another kind of European success story that's now listing in the States is Klarna. So this is one of our poster children, but just for a little bit of context, at 63 trillion, the total value of US stocks is now 4 times bigger than all of Europe's bourses combined. 10 years ago, it wasn't even twice the size. Europe doesn't have a single public company valued at more than 500 billion, and the US has 8 worth more than a trillion. So I guess the main question for us is there a world in which we can see Europe as an attractive listings destination?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there are multiple stories, multiple things going on here. The thing I would like to start with is that we've just talked about Europe being behind on some areas. This is actually a story about some really exceptional European founders. So Sebastian Siemiatkowski is an incredibly smart founder at Klarna.
Which we have buckets of, to be fair, right? We have buckets of smart people. I was just very quickly before I continue to interrupt you. I was speaking with a family office this week, and they were saying we only invest in the UK and the Bay. And the reasoning being was that from their perspective, agree or disagree, that was where the smartest brains on the planet are. So we have all of this wealth of talent here. It just saddens me a bit they have to go off to the States and list, that's all. But sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, so let's come back to the listing point in a minute, because it's not important. But, Sebastian, I think, is great. You got Nick Staransky from Revolut, arguably the most successful European founder. Right now, you got Peter van der Does from Adyen, who's created an incredible company. And what's so interesting is that all these three are fintech companies, and we have a real strength there. And arguably, Revolut is the most successful fintech company on the planet.
They just got their banking license this week, right?
UK banking license. They've had a European banking license, EU banking license for a little while. But what they're kicking off now is loans, proper loans, mortgages. Mm-hmm. And they're going to roll that out across Europe. Yeah. Transformative proposition. Mm-hmm. I don't think people quite realize how important mortgages are in a full-scale banking product.
Yeah, because current accounts don't make any money. That's why.
They don't make any money, but they also don't tie you to a bank in the same way. So if I was any of the big, major legacy banks, like kind of the Lloyds and the Barclays and the NatWests of this world, and I had been relying on having that ability to offer mortgages, and I'd look at this, I would be really scared. Revolut offers in every other way vastly superior customer experience. If they can also finance your mortgage and your house purchase, it's game over for these legacy banks, I think.
Well, what's the other main financial play for the big banks is private banking. So they have their corporate banks, private banks, and then they almost, from memory, they almost throw away the consumer piece. It's a bit troublesome, doesn't make much money, but then obviously mortgages, loans, and then private corporate. That's the mainstay of their revenue, as far as I remember. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, mortgages is the important thing on the consumer side, absolutely. So Revolut is going to bring that in, and so it was just to come back to we've talked earlier about kind of second-rate European search engines, but no, Revolut is an absolutely global success story in fintech. Adyen is up there with Stripe, neck and neck. Incredibly strong business. So we have developed some incredible businesses here in Europe, and we should just celebrate that. Back to Klarna, they went through a real roller coaster. They were valued at $46 billion in 2021, kind of at the height of SERP madness. And then they, I think in just a really, really grown-up way, decided to take a massive haircut and slash the valuation to less than $7 billion in 2022 because they needed to raise a new round, and this is what they had to get done to get that round done. And they were like, okay, nobody likes a down round. This is a beefy down round, but it'll enable us to get the financing we need so we can move on. Now they're moving towards What a wonderful thing. I think big success. And I just think we should celebrate that. almost separately to the where do they list, because it's a great thing. Now, buy now, pay later in and of itself, not without controversy. But let's put that to one side for now and just think about, there's actually somebody here that's built a huge billion-dollar business out of Europe and listing it. By the way, similar to the way Spotify did, right? Also, ending up listing a hugely successful company and listing in the States. So let's unpack the whole where do companies list piece. European capital markets, what does it mean? Let's do a little, time experiment. Let's jump into the time machine back to 2008. In 2008, London was the global financial hub #1, ahead of New York, in terms of attractiveness, in terms of volume, in terms of just business and deals being done. Today, it's been relegated to what is probably a shared second space. It's been under so much pressure from, in many ways, excessive regulation compounded with Brexit. And it seems that we've had this golden goose, this incredible source of strength here in Europe, which is the City of London, the financial center, and it's been attacked from all sides. And then we look 15 years later, after all those attacks, and we look back and we say, how come everybody's listing in the US? Well, guess what? We've been doing our best to sabotage the one place we had that was a reasonable contender to be the home here in Europe. And then we're surprised.
Where's the tie, Mads? Who's London tie with the second?
You could argue, depending on how you look at the strength of the Chinese economy, you can argue Shanghai. And of course, there are many ways to look at the Chinese economy. Is it strong, and is it on the rise, or is it in trouble? Over time, for sure, the Chinese economy is going to continue to grow just because of who they are and how many they are, and kind of the discipline of the country. But back to London, I think the city has got so much to offer, and I think we've been really unfair to the point where now even Labour, even Rachel Reeves has sort of acknowledged that there's been too much regulation, and we got to start cutting back on that, and we got to give the city better ways to compete. Now, unfortunately, the Brexit damage is done, and it's going to be hard to undo. And it's hard to see a credible way to reestablishing another, what would that be, with Paris, Frankfurt, Amsterdam? I mean, they're much, much, much smaller. And so it just seems we had the hub, and we've sort of done our best to destroy that source of strength. So there's a lot of work to do to rebuild.
Well, I mean, the Labour government is making lots of noise. Hopefully there'll be some action soon. But we've run out of time. I mean, we were going to talk about the UK economy cooling, Reeves's pension plans. Maybe we can catch up with this next week, because there's so much to dig into and so much good stuff to dig into that's happening across Europe. But more on that next week. That has been the seed for the week ending the 23rd, 24th this weekend. Love you, Mads. Speak to you soon.
Likewise, brother. Have a fab one.